Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on where you are watching from. When I look at men and their supposed intelligence, I laugh. Let me tell you, the will of God must be fulfilled. The will of God must come to pass, whether you like it or not. I don't care the amount of force you command, maybe West Africa regional force or world's regional force. The will of God will be fulfilled. I like what the prophet said. He said, if death wants to come, even if you are surrounded with millions of army, death will cross the fence and come. And I want to tell you, I still believe in most of those prophecies I shared here. I believe in them. That's tightly. You may call them predictions. Some of you may call them whatsoever. I want to tell you, I still believe in them. The will of God concerning Nigeria must be done. Yes. Whether you like it or not, whether you are the president of Nigeria now. In fact, let me tell you, you cannot determine the next president, even if you are the president. The will of God must be done. I don't care about your position in this society. The will of God must be done. I am aware some of the prophets who made certain predictions and prophecies concerning the 2023 presidential election were intimidated. Some were hounded. One has traveled. The other one, they roped in into a particular matter which we are yet to know if he is culpable. There is an attempt to silence certain voices. Perhaps in silencing the voices, you've silenced the prophecies. The evil forces ruling this country, this nation, are hell-bent on making sure the wrong people continue to hold power in this nation. They want to make sure the wrong people continue to be at the helms of affairs in this nation. They want to quench any voice that will be on the contrary. Now let's get back to the prophecy of Osinbajo and the interim government. You know, those prophets talked about interim government. Meanwhile, we have heard and we have heard from the oppressors that there is no provision in the constitution for interim government. And so there's a provision for somebody who did not win the election to be imposed on us. That is what I want to ask. Yeah? A corrupt INEC headed by Mahmoud. There's a provision in the constitution for him just to announce anybody to be president in Nigeria. Somebody we didn't vote, not minding the consequences of betraying over 100 million people. Of course, interim government is unconstitutional, but there could be occasion that might only be the solution. Yes, it can come to a point you even be begging, oh, let's have interim government to solve this. Yes. Interim government could be the only option to save the situation if a particular situation arises. Don't be surprised. That was what one of the prophets said, Pastor Kinsey Okuwe. He said, yes, it is not in the constitution, but the situation could ask for it. Certain things could arise that the best way, let somebody hold power while we resolve this. Anything is possible. It is very possible. Nigerians may even ask for it at that same time. Now, I want to give you an instance. Yes, they said there is no provision for interim government in the constitution. But let me tell you, there is a provision for the government to continue to stay in power beyond the time to get things right. Yes, there's a provision for that, according to what Tony Nnadi said. So if it happens that there is a need, Buhari can decide to stay further in power to address certain things. And if Buhari is not willing, that is why I still mention Osinbajo steady. And by the way, the video you're going to see is about Osinbajo. Yes, Osinbajo is like he has become obedient. But we are going to look at it. Yeah, so Don't drink wine yet. The men drinks are coming. Osinbajo is in the picture again. I want you to see this video. Osinbajo did not mention interim government, but he has become obedient. You need to watch this video and we will be right back.
In 1989, I was about to get married and I was searching for a good place to rent, a good house to rent. I met my landlord-to-be, who happened to be an elderly lawyer who obviously did more real estate than legal practice. I mean, he was mainly just in business of real estate. So when I met him, he let me know that there were 3 categories of people that he would not rent his property to. Of course, he didn't know who I was. And the 3 categories of people that he would not rent his properties to were Igbos, Ijebus, and lawyers. Igbos, Ijebus, and lawyers. He made it very clear to me. I was disqualified on 2 accounts. He then said to me, pointing behind him at a few shriveled-looking books in a small bookshelf behind him, that he had the arsenal to destroy any tenant in court if I gave him any trouble. He later on, of course, discovered to his embarrassment that I was a law teacher and at the time advisor to the then Attorney General of the Federation. And of course, that I'm also Ijebu.
Ijebu?
I've shared this story to illustrate a point that I think is hugely important, which is that prejudice and bias are natural aspects of human nature. Everyone has prejudices and preferences that are reinforced by stories and narratives that they hear. Prejudice is a function of environment in which one is socialized and the level of exposure that one has. All across this country, different ethnicities are subjects of popular stereotypes, whether it is the notion that Ijebus are stingy, or that Igbos have an excessive love for money, or that the Fulanis are cunning, unforgiving, or more recently, violent, or that the Ebira and the Ika are practitioners of seasoned witchcraft. These are stereotypes, and they are, of course, by the very nature of stereotypes, wild generalizations, most likely to be false, and unlikely to hold up to any kind of empirical tests. But they are the narratives people have woven about other tribes and, in fact, people of other religions. Sometimes these stories are repeated so many times that they are soon accepted as facts. And when we accept these stories as facts about other people, and people of other ethnicities and people of other religions, who we have never met with or interacted with, they shape our judgments about them even before they have spoken. Elections, for example, by their very nature, tend to be already divisive. Partisan democratic competition compels us to align ourselves with the camps that most reflect our ideals and aspirations. In a diverse society such as ours, democratic competition is intensified by the socio-cultural cleavages that exist in society. This is true of any heterogeneous society or democracy. In an election cycle in which the major contenders come from different ethno-regional classes or zones, there was always a sense that the competition was going to be particularly intense. But at the same time, it would not be accurate to reduce the election to an ethnic census. As we saw, the contenders performed strongly in parts of the country other than their natal regions. Unfortunately, one of the unsavory tendencies that was witnessed in this election cycle, and has been so in previous ones, but perhaps heightened somewhat, was the weaponization of ethnic, religious, and sectional prejudices in ways that are damaging to social cohesion. Religion was quite clearly made an issue. And in some parts of the country, political biases are introduced even between denominations of the same religion. In some cases, ethnic profiling took place at polling booths. There's a popular female food blogger and YouTuber called Sisi Yemi, a Yoruba woman, who took to her verified Twitter handle to say, and I quote, "My husband and I were not allowed to vote. They said we look like Igbo people. Wow. I can't believe this," end of quote. Almost without fail, in every election cycle, politicians have forcefully, either overtly or covertly, sought to persuade voters that voting for their particular candidate or the particular political party they favor is the will of God, and that voting for the opposing party was a violation of the divine will. Repeatedly, we hear of prophets who support political parties one way or the other. This is a matter of great concern because long after an election is over, and long after the leading contenders have sheathed their swords, the rhetoric, the words, and the means used to compete can have adverse long-term effects on society. Where the forces of primordial division and polarization are harnessed for the sake of electoral gain, the venom of such devices remain and continue to poison communal relations, setting neighbors against neighbors.
Oh, wow.
Some of the political rhetoric that we have heard in the course of this election cycle have been disturbing because they recall similar rhetoric used by politicians during some of the darkest chapters of our country's existence. In the First Republic, the exploitation of prejudice and incitement of hatred against ethnic communities led to the collapse of that democratic dispensation. It led to bloody pogroms and a civil war that cost in excess of 2 million lives. We talk about the Civil War, but we seem to ignore the fact that it was the manipulation of ethno-religious sentiment that eventually boiled over into that tragedy. The demons released by that bloody conflict amongst brothers are yet to be fully caged, and we pay the price of that healing process every day. That is not a chapter of our history that we should ever allow to repeat itself. But believe it or not, Nigeria is changing. There are no longer any ethnically homogeneous enclaves in Nigeria. As our own nations have evolved, one of the most discernible changes that we have witnessed is the disappearance of ethnically homogeneous spaces. Everywhere across the country, people from diverse ethnic and religious backgrounds are schooling together, doing business together, commingling, intermarrying, and raising families. Our much talked about linguistic diversity is not a barrier, as many Nigerians are multilingual. Increasingly, we see that the heart and face of a new Nigeria is a socio-cultural hybrid, appreciative of the cultural diversity of our society, attuned to its culture, but also blessed with an inclusive cosmopolitan outlook. For many of these Nigerians, young Nigerians in particular, their ethnic and national identities are not in contradiction. For young Nigerians who belong to the most globalized generation in our country's history, this is especially true. Their friendships, their education, their lived experiences have brought them into contact with a favorable variety of identities and cultures in their societies and on the planet. And we see their multicultural outlook in the social networks, in the entrepreneurial partnerships, and their political activism, which transcend the old primordial allegiances. Leadership does not today, and Nigerian leadership today, does not have the luxury of toying with prejudice. The leadership elite, and when I refer to the leadership elite, I refer not just to the political elite, I refer also to the religious elite and to the business elite. We have a duty to conduct ourselves with a high sense of responsibility, even as we prosecute the contest for power. Historically conscious and patriotic elite all over the world recognize that beyond the letter of the law, beyond what the law asserts, there are lines that must not be crossed in the pursuit of political power, especially in fragile societies and democracies such as ours. One of such lines is the willful exploitation of sectional sentiments and the invocation of ethnic antipathies to mobilize a political constituency. This is the challenge of leadership in our own country today. And it's a challenge that our leadership elite face. Elites have a responsibility to discipline themselves first and foremost in the pursuit of political ambitions and their exercise of power to ensure that the fabric of our communities is not rent asunder. We must recognize that if peaceful coexistence is sacrificed on the altar of partisan politics, then all will be lost. I believe that Nigeria is neither unique nor exceptional on account of her diversity. The genre of scholarship and public polemic that makes a problem of our country's profusion of ethnicities and religions and characterizes it as a profound flaw is one that I differ strongly with. I very strongly differ that merely because we are ethnic nations that came together or that we are from different religions, for that reason, it is necessarily a huge problem that is insurmountable. My diversity is neither a liability nor a curse. It is in fact a blessing and an asset. Diversity deepens the pool of socio-cultural capital available to us. We're enriched by the frothy ferment of the vast multiplicity of perspectives which provide us with a treasury of tools for growth and progress.
Professor, please.
And I've long maintained that in Nigeria, what is at issue is not and has never been our diversity, but our capacity to manage it with a sense of fairness, equity, and justice. All diverse nations find their unique ways of managing the tensions which inevitably arise from the commingling of an assortment of people. Let me conclude with another personal story. On the 16th of July 2022, I went in for a surgery on my right femur at a hospital in Lagos. As I lay on the operating bed and I was about to be anesthetized, full anesthesia, which will put me out completely, and I'll be completely unconscious for the 3 hours or so that the operation would take. Just before I lost consciousness, a thought crossed my mind that I would be absolutely at the mercy of these surgeons and paramedics and anesthesians who surrounded the bed that I was lying on. It struck me that I had actually allowed these people to take over my life, and I had to entrust them with my life. One of them was from the Southeast. The head of the team was from Delta. Some were Muslims, some were Christians, some were from the North, some were from the South. In fact, I suspect that one of them, who I spoke to later, did not even believe in God. Yet, as I lay on that bed, it didn't seem to matter where they came from, because they were experts. When we make the decisions that affect our lives and the decisions that affect our children the most, somehow we're able to ignore tribal or religious prejudices. The pilots who flew our planes or who fly our planes, in fact, the pilots, about a couple of weeks ago, I was flown to Lagos by 2 female pilots. So for those amongst my team who discriminate against women, they were left entirely in the hands of these 2 ladies who flew us all the way to Lagos. The teachers who teach our children in school, we don't necessarily ask where they're from so long as they are good teachers. The soldiers and other law enforcement agents who put their lives on the line for our safety every day, we don't ask them where they're from so long as they can.
Wow. That was interesting. We can go as far as continue to listen to that, but let's look at what we've had. Oh my God. This is what we call Professor. Professor, not be just say I be professor. This is a grounded one. Osinbajo, I doff my hat for you. You are too much. Let's begin to look at what he said with the encounter he had many years ago, having had the story of the landlord who doesn't want Igbo, Ijebu, and lawyers. Can you imagine? And he talks about stereotypes. And if you look at his message, you will be able to predict where he was heading to. Though I was thinking this message should have come the next day after the presidential election or the next day after the gubernatorial. Yes, I wish the message came that day and it will be more effective. Meanwhile, I like what the VP did. He made a lot of senses. Yes, stereotypes are common, and certain ethnicities in Nigeria are stereotyped to the extent that it becomes generalized. Yes, you say certain people behave like this, certain people, you don't understand that it could be, some of the times it could be personal. And beyond stereotypes, people are seen like that. Let me add that this is not even limited to ethnicities. Yes, it's not limited to ethnicities. It cut through people of the same language. Even we Igbos among ourselves, if you go deep, you realize that we stereotype one village or one community, stereotype the others. It will tell you these people are known with certain character and traits. You know, it extends to a point of goes to a point of being discriminated because of certain things that people's maybe they say you are known for this. Let me not mention names. Specifically, he was talking about the impact of that on this election that just passed. They just concluded worst election in the history of Nigeria. How evil politicians employed that tactics as they have been doing in other elections to gain acceptance, to win over their opponents. So he said things like that have been, but according to him, it heightened this particular time, this 2023 election. It was like, in fact, the thing wear shirts, put tie. Sincerely. And let me add that aside the grammar is too much. And this man was not reading from a book, but the whole thing was reading like, oh my God, this man is amazing. I told you he's becoming obedient because the obedient people are cultured people. And somehow he was talking to his boss too. Yes, his boss is Tinubu. I remember he contested with Tinubu during the APC primaries. I don't think there is any grudge anyway, but then he's letting the old man know that they are aware of what transpired and their calmness must not be taken for granted. Meanwhile, let me advise our VP before we continue. VP, because warm up for interim government. Warm up, as those prophets said. Please warm up. It will come. It will come to a point they might say, "Please hold this power for a while." Okay, let's not even call it interim government. Just they will say, "Hold power for a while." I hope you are ready. And you will not look faces those times. You will just say, "Okay, let me hold this power. Let the court proceedings continue. Whoever the court pronounces winner, and the court will do well. Yes, the court will do well this time because Nigeria is at stake. They want to save Nigeria or destroy Nigeria further. So I hope the court will do well this time around." Oga VP, I so much respect you, and I hope you will not hand power over power to the father of so many forms of impunities. Something has to be done quickly. You must make this tribunal hasten their step, and the right things must be done, or else we are in big trouble. A lot of people are already feeling the trouble. These guys are yet to take over, but we are feeling their heat already. Now, on the issue of religion, don't be surprised. He was indirectly talking to, he hinted indirectly about the Muslim ticket, though he will not mention that directly. Yes, like I said, I'm aware it would not have gone down well with him, but somehow his hands are tied. It's a matter of choice. It has happened before, but it's not that they are it's a welcome development for him. Now, can you imagine what he said about the Yoruba YouTuber called Sisi Yemi, who alarmed that her husband and her were stopped, were not allowed to vote, I think in Lagos, simply because they said they look like Igbos. He felt so bad. And that he was directly talking to Tinubu and his thugs. That was it. There's a particular video Tinubu was telling his thugs to snatch it, grab it. What a nonsense. Then I will not fail to say that he talks about prophets and their prophecies and methods generally applied by, including the prophets and certain religious figures and political and non-political people who, in trying to convince voters to vote for them. He talked about the long-term effect and impact, the post-election impact, the adverse long-term effect on the society, and truly he is right. Though most of what we see, the stereotype whatsoever, the poisons are mostly during election, during election period, but its impact hardly go away. Yes, but there was what we call a fever pitch. It's heightened during elections, but the impact may not go away. Certain people are told, your mother is not from Lagos, your mother is Igbo, you cannot be voted for. The person telling you his wife is not Yoruba, his wife is from Delta. The father of all of that. We're not even sure he's from Nigeria. There are, so many questions about his identity. Meanwhile, the professor said so much in this short video, and I quite agree with him. I agree with the professor, who is also the current vice president of Nigeria, as at the time of this video. But I expect that they in power should do something to make sure justice is served. Yes, it shouldn't end at just talking. Enough of this talking. We like it, but those impressions, those things that happened must be corrected immediately. The election was a sham, met with several inconsistencies, violence, and the rest. And if the vice president wants to do something, it is not just speech. She'll go beyond that. Yes. Nigerians were taken for a ride by INEC and some of the political parties. Something has to be done. If you are disenfranchised, if you are stopped from voting, that means you did not take part, despite having your PVC, despite the PVCs that were dumped. The election was not credible. If you guys must act, you should convene, meeting of like minds and, few unlike minds, and you oppose what was done in that election. If possible, let there be a cancellation. Yes. It's time to oppose, change the order of things. It's not just talking and talking. All the issues raised in connection with this election must be addressed. Not just talking, no. Something must be done. Something tangible. It shouldn't just pass like the other ones. I expect a probe of whatever happened, and not just condemnation of it. We will not just accept anyone to be installed as the president of this country. We voted for certain people, and we know who won. That is the cocoa, not species. He mentioned about lines that must not be crossed. But the fact is that those lines, those politicians and their talks have crossed the lines. So what must be done should be done. We want justice immediately. It is also criminal of INEC to announce somebody who they like a winner. As far as I know, if what happened is allowed to pass, then we are in serious trouble in this country. You guys at the helms of affair now at top must stop INEC and whatever they did. You must stop them. That is where we want to start. It's not just about giving us speeches. Yes, the speech is nice. Let it be the starting point. We expect you to do something. The winner of this election must be made to clinch power and not people who are coming through the back door. Viewers, what do you think? Add your comment on the comment section. Please, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more updates. Bye-bye for now.